Good evening, everyone. Recently, I had several discussions with different government partners and employers and workers representatives in Indonesia about employment injury insurance and occupational safety and health (OSH). The government issued the regulations to reform the employment injury insurance back in 2023, and the Ministry of Manpower just adopted the regulation to implement this new government regulations. So in the new operating procedures of employment injury insurance, the major change was on the financing modalities. Previously, health insurance, the people were often report to the health insurance authority to use a JKN health insurance cards to access to medical care services whenever they go to the hospital. So people didn't really have awareness to differentiate between occupational diseases, injuries, and normal diseases and injuries. So what happened in the past was that the JKN funds depleted faster than the government expected, because more and more people just started using JKN cards when they even had industrial accidents. So the government reformed this, and under the new regime, in the case of industrial accidents, of course, JKK will be used, but in the context of suspicious occupational diseases or injuries, the workers can still go to the hospital, but the first payer would be the primary payer would be BPJS Ketenaga Kerjaan using JKK funds up to 1 month. So and then this will be the period that authority will make a final decision on whether or not this is the industrial accident case or not. And then after 1 month or after the decision was made, either JKN or JKK will start covering the medical care costs. So that will be clearer in a way who should cover what period under the regime. However, what I found problematic in a way in my discussion with the stakeholders is that to me it is still not very clear who has the authority on what, who has what kind of obligations. Usually, employers are obliged to ensure the OSH for their employees, of course. So they may have to do any preventive measures from occupational safety and health. That's the first thing, and most employers know this. However, when it comes to reporting and when it comes to accessing employment injury insurance benefits, I guess not all employers are aware of these are their obligations to cover the costs, right? But more concretely, some of the employers or employers representatives told me that actually many employers are afraid of being accused if they report industrial accident case to the labor authority. However, in many countries, this is the obligation of employers. So employers simply don't have the choice to report or not to report. But I heard a lot of stories that employers are afraid of being penalized, fined, or imprisonment here in Indonesia if they report. But usually in many other countries, if they hide industrial accident cases, the worst consequence will be waiting for employers. So usually employers don't really have an incentive to hide industrial accident cases. That's the first thing. But such awareness is not shared commonly in these countries, in my view. And what about the workers' awareness or understanding about this industrial accidents and the use of health insurance card or the use of employment injury insurance card? Workers also don't have the choice usually in any other countries. They must use the employment injury insurance cards to receive medical care services when they have accident or disease related to employment, during working hours or due to the working environment. So usually they have to go to the designated hospital registered as industrial accident hospital, so that they don't have to pay the full cost of their medical services. However, this kind of understanding is not very shared across workers, employees in these countries. So most of people may think they have a choice of using JECA-N or JECA-K. That's how I understood from several policy dialogues here. But usually they do not have the choice. They must use the right insurance card. If they know this is an industrial accident case, but they used a health insurance card, they are basically cheating the social security system. And in other countries, if they do this on purpose, they will be penalized, fine, or imposed on fine or imprisonment. So this is a worker's obligation to use the right, correct insurance cards. Then the last but not least, what about the government authorities? This is not very clear in my view. Of course, employers must report to the labor authorities when they observe the industrial accidents in their workplace. And it is written as a requirement for employers to do this in the labor legislations here. But what about the role of doctors? They write certification and indicate industrial accidents, disease, and then who will make the final decision whether or not the case was industrial accident case? Of course, the labor authority will do so, but what kind of standard operating procedures exist there? Employers report to the labor authorities, and then workers submit the claims to JKK at the BPJS employment, and then workers go to the hospital to receive certification and a diagnosis and a treatment. And if they use a BPJS card, Kesehatan card, JKN, and what would be the coordination there? Who has the authority to redirect this process to the right way? Kemenakal, Ministry of Manpower, is responsible for labor issues. BPJS employment manage the JKK funds, and they're reporting directly to the president. And BPJS Kesehatan is implementing a JKN health insurance, and they're reporting to the president. And Ministry of Health, of course, supervise doctors, hospitals in these countries. Who is coordinating different authorities and reporting lines in these complex operations. And then another one will come in called Jasa Harga, Jasa Harga, right? That's another insurance for road accidents on the highway, who will coordinate these things. For instance, when the workers, if in other countries, if workers use a health insurance card by mistake, the workers are responsible for paying back to first reporting back to the BPJS Health. They used mistakenly the wrong health insurance card, even though they should have used employment injury insurance card. Then the BPJS Health will send the invoice to this worker, and the workers must pay back the full medical cost to JKN fund first. And then at the same time, workers must claim the benefits to BPJS Employment. And the BPJS Employment will process the claim and reimburse the medical cost to workers. But to do this, of course, the labor authority need to put a stamp approval on industrial accidents. So they have to be recognized as industrial accidents first before the BPJS Employment process the claim. So is there such a comprehensive standard operating procedure understood by everyone in these different institutions? And are there any issues on authorities? I think this kind of standard operating procedures, institutional setup must be discussed in the coming year in Indonesia. Sorry, here's the very last thing. So I also learned that there is somehow difference in medical care package if workers affected workers use JKN and JKK. I do not know in detail why there is a difference in medical care services that affected workers can receive if they use JKN or JKK cards. We must check against one regulation to the others, because these are regulated in different laws and regulations. There may be missing link there. I think that's all my reflections from the recent policy dialogues, and thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.